Representation in video games has been an ever-growing issue that companies have been trying to adapt to for years now. People like to see themselves in the mediums they enjoy, and they tend to gravitate towards things that speak to them. This is definitely a major factor in the crazy amount of customization options games are providing nowadays. But what about representation deeper than the physical attributes? The gaming sphere has been consistently dominated by a certain demographic class of sexy, straight, and white. You have Nathan Drake, Lara Croft, Arthur Morgan, Mario. How can anybody resist that lush mustache? Now, there's nothing wrong with these characters. They are amazing and iconic video game characters and fit the roles they were created to play. But you can't deny that video games as a whole are lacking in representation of other groups of people. As time has gone on, developers have become more cognizant of this issue, and we've seen an uptick in characters that fall outside that aforementioned heteronormative demographic. When specifically looking at the queer community, you can find representation with some of the greatest games ever created. Mass Effect gives the player complete freedom when it comes to Commander Shepard's sexuality, Life is Strange's Max Caulfield is a bisexual woman, and Ellie, the face of the Last of Us franchise, is lesbian. All amazing games that have queer characters and starring roles, and I could talk about any of these games as a good example of queer representation in their own ways. But I'm not going to. All the games I have mentioned have highlighted the queerness of their character in pretty on-the-nose, in-your-face ways, using romance and sex scenes to demonstrate the character's sexuality. Almost like the only way to show the player that the character is queer is to force them to kiss and touch each other's butts. And I think there are ways to use queer themes in your game that aren't inherently sexual. So how does one go about adding queer representation into their game without being so blatant about it? Well, that's easy. Muppets. Enter Bugsnax. Bugsnax, in my opinion, is a perfect example of representation in video games. Now, I know what you're thinking. Rudy, your obsession with the Muppets has become unhealthy, and we think it's starting to take a toll on your mental health. Just shut up, okay? This isn't just your normal, ordinary, haha funny video. This one's a
contractually obligated literature class credit acquiring video.
That's right, I'm an educated king, what of it? So I got some experts to help me make my points, but we'll hear from them in a bit. First, for those of you that are uncultured in the art that is Bugsnax, let me explain what the hell you're looking at. As Kiro Kiro Bonito sings in the game's main theme, Bugsnax is a game about these creatures that are kinda and kinda sick, and it's your job to learn how to capture each of these little creatures in various jobs. There are 100 of these cute little suckers, and it's your job to catch them all. But wait, Rudy, I didn't fill out an application for this job. Why am I doing this? Well, you're doing it for these guys. These are the Grumpuses. Each of them chose to leave civilization behind in an attempt to start a new life on this strange new island. You have Phil Bo Fiddlepie, the well-meaning, low self-esteem having, clumsy, self-appointed mayor of the town of Snacksburg. Wambiz Troubleham, the stern, stubborn, hard-working yeehaw farmer. His wife, Triffany Laudablog, a passionate and enthusiastic archaeologist looking to uncover secrets of Bugsnax's past. Beffica Winklesnoot, the snarky socialite who collects other people's secrets for fun. Gramble Gigglefunny, the rancher who refuses to eat Bugsnax because he loves them just too damn much. Wiggle Wigglebottom, the pop star looking for inspiration in the Bugsnax themselves. Cromdo Face, the sleazy salesman looking to make a quick buck. Shelda, the group's spiritual advisor. Chanlo Funkbun, the himbo muscle man, his boyfriend Snorpy Fizzlebean, the paranoid genius inventor, and his sibling Floofty Fizzlebean, the world's first ever gastroentomologist, studying how eating Bugsnax affects the Grumpuses. Eggabell Batternugget, the group's self-loathing doctor, and finally, Eggabell's partner, the world-renowned explorer, Elizabeth Megafig. You play as a reporter who was sent an invitation to the island by Elizabeth herself in hopes of sharing Bugsnax with the world. However, once you arrive on Snacktooth Island, you come to learn that Elizabeth has gone missing and the townsfolk have abandoned each other and fled town. So if you want to get these interviews for your story, you're going to have to bring these Grumpuses back to town, and in order to do so, you'll have to convince them by completing challenges that comprise of catching and feeding them certain Bugsnax. Also, when you eat Bugsnax, you become Bugsnax. It's a whole thing, it's confusing, just play the game. Along the way, you'll explore new lands, see all kinds of interesting Bugsnax, and get to learn and interact with each Grumpus themselves. Each of the Grumpuses has such an interesting, sweet, and overall incredibly pleasant side story that can and should be explored. The game overall is fun, goofy, and tells a story that will fill you with mystical whimsy as well as existential dread. Bugsnax is and will forever be one of my favorite games, and I think everyone should play it through at least once in their lifetime, as it really is something special. But this is a kid's game, Rudy. There's no way this game could be a great example of queer representation, and it's definitely not worth our time analyzing. Actually, gender and queer theorist and author Judith Haberstam argues in their book The Queer Art of Failure that success in a heteronormative capitalist society equates too easily to specific forms of reproductive maturity combined with wealth accumulation.
Oh snap, he's got sources!
That's right, I told you. We're learning in this video. Also, there's gonna be more of me regurgitating large words. What I'm really trying to say is that just because something is goofy and not highbrow doesn't mean it can't be analyzed and taken seriously. And in fact, it's actually super important to find these conclusions in material that is immature and silly. So we're overanalyzing these gay little puppets. Believe it or not, half the cast of Bugsnax is queer. Chandlo is bisexual, Snorpy, Elizabeth, and Eggabell are all gay, Wiggle is pansexual, and Floofty is non-binary. All main characters who each get their time in the sun to show off their personalities to the player. But what makes them great examples of queer representation in my opinion is how they treat each other as well as how the other non-queer grumpuses treat them. Like they aren't any different at all. Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, a queer theorist, academic, and author, writes in her book, Epistemology of the Closet, "Once the paradigm's blurred, utopia begins. Meaning and sex become the objects of free play, at the heart of which the forms and the practices, liberated from the binary prison, will achieve a state of infinite expansion." This idea of a utopian society where one isn't held to these binaries, and lives are able to be lived without fear of subjected hate being placed upon you because of your gender or sexual identity, comes to fruition in the town of Snaxburg. Each of the grumpuses treats each other fairly, no matter how they identify, making the characters' queerness both integral parts of the characters, as well as wholly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, culminating in a truly accepting queer utopian society. In their book, Sedgwick also talks about the idea of the performative work of coming out, seeing coming out of the closet as a performative action overall, a grandiose gesture that is seen as necessary and expected in everyday society, which is the norm when it comes to representation in video games as well. Most of the time you'll find out about a character's sexual or gender identity through a powerful romance scene, a notable side quest, or some over-the-top trope. But with Bugsnax, that performance is very small or completely non-existent. The grumpuses are just living. You find out about their identities through normal conversation. Identities are expressed and life goes on. Taking a far less performative approach to these topics cements that utopian dynamic and pushes back on the way representation has been handled so many times before. Another theme that is very prevalent throughout the game is the idea of failure. The grumpuses may be kind to each other, but they are often very unkind to themselves. While each of the grumpuses goes through their own internal struggle, I'm just going to focus on Chandlo and Eggabell at the moment. Chandlo and Eggabell both run into the same issue. They both want to be better for their respective partners. Chandlo only wants to eat Bugsnax that make him big and strong so he can protect Snorpy from the dangers of the world. And Eggabell feels like more of a burden than an asset to Lisbeth. Both try their best and fail in their own ways, ultimately seeing themselves as the problem and blame who they are as grumpuses for their shortcomings. This is a common pit that many fall into, and that is especially true for the queer community, often feeling isolated and alone due to things they cannot change about themselves. But as both Chandlo and Eggabell learn, they are not alone in these feelings. Both Snorpy and Lisbeth feel they have failed their partners in their own ways. Together, the pairs are able to acknowledge their failures and start to see them as points for learning rather than insurmountable negatives. The characters of Bugsnax all feel at one time or another that their failures are so personal that they cannot be overcome. But together we learn that failure, while integral to each person's life, is never unbeatable, especially when you have the support of others. In Queer Art of Failure, Halverson writes, "All losers are the heirs of those who lost before them. Failure loves company." So whether you fail to be strong, fail to be brave, fail to see your strengths, or fail at whatever you decide to focus on, Bugsnax teaches us that we are never alone in our failures. Bugsnax is a goofy game about furry Muppets and living food, but somehow, someway, it's able to be so much more. Past its goofy outer shell, Bugsnax is an incredibly deep game that teaches us so much about the human spirit as well as being an incredible example of representation in video games, showing us that representation can be done quite effectively without the need for raunchy sex scenes or coming out performances. Queer characters simply living and thriving amongst their peers. Bugsnax shows us that at the end of the day, while our identities in all forms are important parts of who we are, at our core, we are far more than just our labels. Deep, deep down, we are all one thing. We are all Bugsnax.